Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Tryon Palace. This is the kitchen office, and I'm Sherry, and I am going to be talking a bit today about the kitchen office itself and about cooking in the 18th century. Now, we do welcome any comments or questions that you have, and we will be more than happy to answer those at the end. Now, to begin with, I'm going to tell you a little bit about this building. The kitchen office is a two-story building, and yes, I did just call it an office, which most people wonder why. Back in the 18th century, when Governor Tryon and Governor Martin was here, office was the term used for places, where work was done. Well, lots of work was done in this particular building, and across our courtyard is the stable office. It is also called an office. Now, we do have 4 rooms on this level. The first room that is to my right as you go through the building is the scullery. That is where a young girl, probably about 8, maybe a little older, would be starting out as a scullery maid. She would be washing dishes pretty much all day long. And then the next room, that's the servants' hall. That's a bit bigger room, and that has a fireplace. And that would be where the servants who were here would have had their meals. And also, they would have done the laundry there. Now, I'm talking the wet laundry, where water was involved. Now, of course, they did not have clothespins and clothes hangers, those type of things. So it would have gone out, the clothes would have gone outside to be washed or to be hung up, probably laid over bushes on the ground, anywhere they could put them, weather permitting. Now, the next room, as you go to the front of the building, is the office for the secretary to the governor. And as you go upstairs, we have 4 additional rooms. One is a very large room, and that is where they would have done the dry laundry. That means where all the weaving, the sewing, and all of the ironing would have been done, the maintenance of all the clothes for the governor and his family and for the servants. And then there are the 3 bed chambers. 2 of them, one for the boys' bed chamber, one for the girls' bed chamber. And they would have had maybe 4 to 6 boys or 4 to 6 girls in each of those rooms. Now the cook was in charge here and was one of the higher servants. And he had, or she had, their own bed chamber. Now, we really would love for you to come back and take a real first-hand look at those rooms and this building whenever we are able to open again. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about cooking in the 18th century. There are some items here that are probably of interest. First of all, I'm going to start with the fact that cooking back when the governor and his family were here, it was quite involved. The main meal started at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It lasted several hours. That was called dinner. The other 2 meals, that was breakfast, that was supper. That was pretty much leftovers of everything, because food preservation, certainly not like what we have today, and also pretty much a very difficult thing in this particular area of the country, on the coastal region. Now, the other meals, supper, breakfast, they were pretty much in their rooms. Now, the meals were 2 different types. One, the governor and his family and his guests would have had the more expensive meals. The meals that involved very hard to get items, very expensive items, and all the desserts and that type of thing. Servants, now, they would have had more of the meals that came out of the garden and the really lesser meats. Now, I have some items here that I'm going to point out about cooking. First of all, we have over here the gridiron. This is a place where much of the cooking would have been done, and that they could fry. It's pretty much like the burners on your stove. So you can fry, you can bake pretty much on that gridiron. And you see this is the hearth room, this is the kitchen, this is where all of that would be taking place. And probably they would have had many different fires here, of different heights. Maybe one big one, but mostly probably several different ones in different heights. over the fire to handle things. Now, a misconception is that back in the 18th century, many of the cooking on the fire, at the fireplace, at the hearth, that ladies and children were either killed or were hurt by reaching over. Yes, that did happen, but it was not the main thing that caused those issues. Most of it was disease. That was the main issue for that time period. But over here, like I said, we have the gridiron, but one other way to cook is that when we have school children that come, I always ask them, is that what do we not have in here that you see, and it's in your kitchen? Well, most of the time I'm going to get the items. I'm going to get microwaves, I'm going to get refrigerators, that type of thing. But the major thing is you don't have electricity. So therefore, you don't have a stove. Well, yes, I do. This is my stove, this is my burners, and this floor right here, the hearth, that is my oven. We cook here at the palace, in the kitchen office, Tuesdays through Saturdays with a fire. And we do it for demonstration purposes, and we cook a period appropriate item. And by saying period appropriate, it is something that they would have eaten back in the 18th century. Now, we do have a historian on board, and in fact, if you watched the video yesterday, you would have seen Matt, and Matt is the one who makes sure that everything that we do cook, and everything that we present over at the palace, on the table, the dining room table, which is faux food, but over here it's real food, that it is something they would have eaten back in the 18th century. Now, one of the ways of cooking and baking, which is what we do a lot, is that I'm going to build a fire here in the morning. Probably about 2 hours later, it's going to burn down enough that I'm going to have coals, I'm going to have embers, that I can pull out of that fire and shovel them out right here on the floor, and then put my Dutch oven. Now, as you can see, I've got it sitting on a trivet. That would be something that I would sit right on top of those hot coals. And it depended on what I'm cooking as to which one of these I would use and how many coals I would put out. And then I'm going to shovel hot coals right on top. Now, it cooks pretty much like it would cook in your oven if you were cooking at 350 degrees. Back over the holidays, I cooked a lot of things that were, especially gingerbread cake. If I was going to cook it in my oven at home, it'd probably take about 30 minutes. It takes 30 minutes here. So it's pretty much a 350 degree item or way of cooking. Now that is one way to do it. But over here, we have the beehive oven. This is an oven that you may be a little bit familiar with in that it's kind of similar to a stone ground pizza place oven, but maybe a little different in that you're going to build a fire inside that oven. And it takes, in your home, it takes maybe 15, 20 minutes to set your oven to preheat. This is going to take hours, several hours or more. And you want to get the bricks as hot as you can get them in order to cook. They would have used this back then about several times a week simply because of the time it takes to get it hot. Not very cost effective to do it every day. So they would have baked in batches. And one of the ways that I read that they knew that it was hot enough to bake is that someone stuck their arm in it. And I'm sure it took a lot of practice, but they probably knew what they were doing. So they stuck their arm in it, and if they could count past 15, not hot enough. If they couldn't count past 5, and you felt like your arm was on fire, it was ready to go. So this is the beehive oven. Now moving on around, we have here something that is called English coppers. They look, and especially to school kids, they look like big soup pots, something that you would cook in, but you do not. These are a water system. Water goes into each one of those, and then you've got hot coals, or embers from the fire, that you would put down. The doors actually open, and you have hot water all day long. A system that for cooking, cleaning, whatever you needed hot water for. This was quite unique for the time period and for the colonies. This kitchen, the kitchen office here at Tryon Palace, was based on more of a French style kitchen. Pierre Leblanc, he was a French chef. He came with the governor, and he was here, and he was very instrumental in designing the kitchen. Now, we also know that Governor Martin had a chef named Toole. We're really not sure if Toole was a male or a female, but history just does not tell us. But by saying it is a French-style kitchen, you have a lot of natural light here. We do have some big windows. That's really a nice feature because you don't have to use all those candles, those really expensive candles, and you take advantage of the light that was in the building. Now, there are some other items that I'm going to point out, and one of them I'm going to pick up and bring right over here to the table and show you. This is called a reflector oven, or a tin kitchen. And it's a rotisserie in that you would put meat, like a whole chicken, whole rabbit, whole squirrel, on to the spit, and you would possibly put some vegetables, anything here at the bottom, and then you're going to turn it periodically by moving each one of these through the holes. And when you're done, you can pour out on this side, you can pour out the juices from the meat that has dripped down. How this works is you put it in front. I just knocked over a thing. All right. This is the, you would put it right in front of the fire, and you want to check on it, see how it was doing. You just open the door, take a look at it. And one way of controlling it is that you can move it back and forth. You can get it closer if you needed it to get hotter, or you move it back if you wanted it to be not quite so close. Now, one item over here I have is this sabatier. This is an ice cream maker. And I have actually made ice cream in it. It does turn out pretty good, but it is quite different from the way that we are accustomed to making ice cream nowadays. It's not electric, obviously, and what happens is that you're going to put your mixture in this. You're going to put your ice down in here in the salt, and you're going to stand here and do this for several hours until it gets hard. And it does take 2, 3, or more hours. Now, we do know that ice in New Bern, or in this part of the country, was difficult to get. So you would probably more have ice cream in the winter months, not the summer months. The ice would have had to come from the mountains, and then some of it actually did come from ships. But we do know that Governor Tryon's wife, Margaret, she actually had a party for Governor Tryon after he was successful in taking a militia and defeating the regulators at Alamance County in 1771. And that was, I think, in May when she had the party and when that happened. And she had some ice cream. She had the ice, I believe, came down from the mountains. Now, back in the 18th century, food coloring and dyeing items was a little bit of a challenge, in that I have some items here that will show you what was used. One is something called cochineal. And another thing, when I ask school children what do they think they are, I usually get pepper or anything like that. No, they are beetles. They live on cactus, and for the most part in South America, but they are in other countries. What happens is they are dried. You take several of them, which I did this morning, and you put them in some water, you stir it up, and you have red dye. It's going to dye clothes, it will dye food, and ladies, it's in cosmetics today, in lipsticks, so, and rouge, anything like that. So if you put on lipstick, you may be putting on some Beatles. Now, one other thing is that in our servants' hall, we have a basket that usually sits in there, and it has in it some onion skins. And these, if you take that, add it to water, then you have yellow dye. And it will dye cloth yellow, just like other, walnuts will actually dye brown. And red cabbage, surprisingly, dyes blue. Now we do have some items over here on the table that I will point out. First of all, we're going to start on this end. This is salt. This in front that looks like a brick is salt. The one behind is sugar. And this is the way they were processed back in the 18th century. That was the way that it came. And another good thing, not the real reason, but one of the good reasons for it being in these different shapes is that if a young servant who was here could not read, could not write, they would know. If I was baking a cake, I'm the cook, and I'm going to bake a cake, and I ask that servant, please go get me some sugar. They are going to know to go to that cone, not to the other white stuff, because I put that in there, I'm probably fired when the governor eats the salted cake. Now we do have here some recipes, and one side note is that back in the 18th century, recipes were actually called receipts. We do show some that we do make. These are items that we actually do make here in Tryon Palace. And the next item, I'm going to pick it up and show you. This may look like a block of chocolate. This may look like a trivet. And I've had quite a number of people, when I ask children in particular, all kinds of different answers. All of them are good answers, but that's not what it is. This is a block of tea. This is compressed tea. What happens is that you take off a portion of it and use your mortar and your pestle, and you press it down, you add water, you have tea. Now this, in the 18th century, what they used to congeal it with was ox blood. Probably quite good for you, protein, but today you can still buy it. We do have it sometimes in our gift shop with little blocks of it, but it's probably not made with ox blood anymore. Now, we do have here another item. This is, back in the 18th century, many things were used, herbs and spices. They were used to make a lot of medicines. And one of these, this is called tincture of dill. It is dill that is mixed with a liqueur. If you open the bottle, you can pretty much smell the vodka that is in it. But they used it for an upset stomach or for something of that nature. And I'm guessing if you took enough of it, you really didn't care if you had an upset stomach. Now, over here, we do have another item. This is a bottle that, one of the things that I have been asked is what was some of my favorite items to cook and what were some of my least favorite. And I'll tell you a little bit about a few of those in just a few moments, but one of them is the English ketchup. English ketchup back in the 18th century was not tomato based. It was a number of years before they kind of figured out that tomatoes were safe for you. So it was more of a fish sauce because the main ingredient was anchovies, not tomatoes. Now I have made it several times. I will be honest, I did not taste it, but it did smell a lot like Worcestershire sauce, so it's pretty much what that was back in the 18th century. Now moving back over here, I do have another item I'd like to point out. One of those is this main item right here. And I'm going to move this so that I don't knock it over again. This is a clock wound spit jack. This was a very advanced contraption in that the governor had one. There were very few in the colonies, and it was extremely expensive. So what happens is that this is a rotisserie. You take this handle, you've got a big piece of meat onto that spit, or one of the big spits that's up top. And then you put the handle on here, if you want, and you turn it. And if you can see, the weight right there is coming up. And then I'm going to spin this around, and that weight's going to start to drop. And when it does, it is going to turn that wheel. Now, it's kind of hard to see it, but it is turning very, very, very slowly. Now, it would have been strung, this cording that you see right here, this would have been strung more across the room so that it would have taken much longer for it to wind down. If you did not have that, and most people did not because it was extremely expensive, and this one is a reproduction, that's why I'm touching it. However, there is one in our Regional History Center that is an actual artifact. But if you didn't have it, you're going to have a young boy. He is going to be called a spit boy. His job would be to sit down in front of that spit, in front of that fire. Doesn't matter how hot it is outside. He's going to sit there and he's going to turn that meat or that spit until that meat is cooked completely. And this pretty much outsourced him, so he does not have to do that. Now, as I said, we do cook a lot of things here, and there is one other item over here that might be of interest. This is a unique looking thing. I'm sure it could serve several different purposes, but this is the 18th century version of a toaster. In that you sit it in front of the fire, you put your toast in the slots, and if you want to toast the other side, you just turn it around, and maybe not with your feet, but you turn it around and you fix toast. Now, there are some other things we have throughout here. We have the ratchet, or the back behind here, trammel. These are items. This looks like a big saw, I'm sure, but it isn't. This is a way of hanging things at a different level over the fire. And that you're going to move that hook wherever you wanted it, hang a pot, anything that you wanted. So those were just mechanisms in order to make things at different levels. Now, I was talking about the fact that there are some items that I have cooked that I really, really like, some that I did not. Usually I try to taste everything that I cook, or other people cook when I'm in here, but not always. But one thing that I really, really did like is called onion pie. It's a little bit different, maybe. It's onions, sliced onions, and it is sliced potatoes and sliced apples in a pie crust. And another thing, pie crusts back in the 18th century were pretty much called coffin cups, but they were a pie crust. Now, also, there were another item was something called spinach toast. Now, that was made a couple of times, and I would actually make it for my guests as an appetizer, but I would not tell them what was in it until after it was over. And they tasted it and they liked it because it had spinach, cooked spinach, and it had apple jelly, and I think egg whites, so a little bit different. The ingredients were quite unusual, and I decided to taste it and decided, hey, that is not bad. That really looked pretty good. Now, the other items that I really did not like was something called the Jelly of Health. That was based upon Jell-O, and we do try to do everything here at Tryon Palace as much as possible the way they did it in the 18th century and using the ingredients they would have used. However, that was gelatin, and back in the 18th century, gelatin came from calf's hoofs, and there certainly was no calf running around here without a hoof, so therefore we used a package of gelatin. But it was gelatin and some other items, including egg, I believe, and egg was in a lot of stuff. And then it turned out to look like gray dishwater. It did have lemon zest in it, so I tasted it. It tasted a little better than it looked, but it was pretty awful. It was not something I would want to cook anymore. Many of the recipes are very, very good. Many of them leave a little bit to be desired. One of them was the fact that we made at one time cabbage. Used cabbage in order to make sauerkraut. Now, that went into one of the crocks here. In fact, it was the crock I was showing a little bit earlier that had the sabatiere in it. You have to put that cabbage inside that crock, and you have to add water, and it has to sit. And it sits for weeks, not for hours, weeks. And it's sat here on the table, and us cooks, and I'm not the only cook here, obviously there are quite a number of us. Every day we would come in, we would have to skim off the green stuff that formed on top. And of course the smell was pretty horrendous. And I was really happy when that managed to move on out of here and we didn't have to see it anymore or smell it anymore. Well, I think that's pretty much all I have to tell you about at this point. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know and I'll send them here and we will try to answer them for you.
First question, what is your favorite thing to cook in this kitchen?
My favorite thing? Well, I think the onion pie was probably one of them, and the other thing was the gingerbread cake. I made a number of those. I think potato balls. Potato balls, that's nothing but pretty much the potato balls that we make today. So it's pretty much the same thing.
A question from Luther. What is that saw-looking thing hanging up?
This is a ratchet. This is a trammel. This is a way of hanging things at different levels over the fire.
Rob wants to know, where would the beer be made?
Different places. I am not sure, Rob, where that beer would have been made, but they would have had quite a bit of beer, simply because back in the 18th century, they were pretty heavy drinkers. And we do have some big barrels in the cellar where a lot of the food was kept simply because of preservation, and also under lock and key and more watchful eyes over there. So yeah, it would have been in big barrels over there probably.
Did the kitchen survive the fire that burned down the palace?
Yes, it did. The kitchen did survive. Unfortunately, though, about 20 years after the fire in 1798, the kitchen fell into such disrepair that they finally decided it was time to take it down. So it was taken down. The kitchen and the palace are complete reconstructions based upon the actual plan. So what you're seeing is what it would have been. However, the stable is the original. The stable office is the original. It made it through the fire and it made it through the demolition of the kitchen.
Nathan wants to know, what do you not like to cook?
What do I not like to cook? Well, one of those was I think the thing I will say as far as not like to cook, anything that takes quite a while to stir or make egg whites. Because this is my whisk. And I will tell you, this is a new one. Because we obviously, after we can touch it, it's not an artifact, so we had some new ones made. The one that we had prior to this, that we've had for a number of years, turned out to be little sticks that were not quite as big, and if you wanted to make egg whites, it's going to take you all day, and you better hope that it's not, the weather is cooperating in order to make them peak up.
Karina wants to know, did the cook live in the kitchen building or on separate grounds?
No, the cook would have lived upstairs. There is a bed chamber that cook would have had all to himself or herself. It is in between the two bed chambers. One of them is the boys' bed chamber, one is the girls', and his or hers would have been right in the middle.
Faith wants to know, what is that on the mantle above your head with the turn handle?
I'm sorry, which one? This one? This is a grinder. This is a rush lamp holder.
Was it unusual to have salt and sugar in that day?
Sugar would have been something that would be quite expensive. Would have been maybe harder to get. Yes, so therefore anything with sugar would have been more for over there pretty much. Salt, probably not quite so hard.
Luther wants to know, how often did the sugar go bad?
I'm not really sure about that one. I'm guessing that they used it up as much as they could, so I doubt it had a lot of time to do that.
Kelly wants to know, how long have you been with the palace?
I have been with the palace 2 years. I do not cook all the time. We are, as interpreters, we do different things around here, so on any given day I may be over in the palace doing palace tours or something else.
That's all your questions.
Well, thank you all very, very much for joining us today. And I will tell you, if you please would like to watch another video, on Monday, we're going to have the history of dueling, which will be quite interesting. And once again, thank you. Have a great day. And please stay safe.